Hi everyone, Sajid Amit here, and welcome to my review of Letshuoer Acoustics EJ07M. So EJ07M is their $600-ish offering, sort of the mid-fi offering, if you can pardon my use of the expression, because they have a very powerful entry-level performer in the S12 and the S12 Pro, which I reviewed in the past. And they also have a flagship, which I've loved. It's called the Letshuoer Cadenza. And I've dropped impressions of the Cadenza on different websites. I'll drop a link to my write-ups on the Cadenza, which I would love to get in for review. But this is what I'm going to review for now. It is a $600-ish offering. M stands for the mass production version, as is evident. It's from Letshuoer Acoustics. So it's a nice looking IEM on the cover, but mine doesn't look like this. I have the matte black version with the gold foil inlays. And I'll just show you the shells. Are very ergonomic and comfortable. I've had no issues wearing them. They house 7 drivers. So one 10mm dynamic driver for bass, 2 BAs, and 4 EST drivers. So 7 drivers. The ESTs are nice, and for the mid-range, they have the Knowles Sonyon drivers, which are nice. These are some high-quality mid-range drivers because these IEMs are well known for the mid-range, and I can see why. They do a nice mid-range. Tonality-wise, I'll discuss, what they sound like, and of course, in terms of technical performance, I'll drop some impressions on the accessories and stuff. So maybe I want to start with the accessories and what it comes with. So this is the cable it comes with. It is fairly usable. It's not bad. I've seen higher-end offerings from companies that have, worse cables. So for $600, it's fine. I mean, it's not super duper ergonomic. It does tangle a bit. It does have a bit of memory. But I mean, it is what it is. You do not get great cables nowadays with IEMs. And I mean, I can complain about it. I can sort of, take a company to task for not giving more expensive cables. But it's not going to make much of a difference because you have high-end stuff from a lot of different brands. And you have the shittiest cables, like with Aroma Audio Jewel. Aroma Audio is a great company. I love their stuff. I love the Jewel. It's possibly my favorite IEM. But the cable it comes with is possibly worse than this. So, I mean, the bottom line is it's a decent cable. It's a right angle 3.5mm connector. It's 2-pin. It's okay. It's got a bit of a jank, a bit of a memory. But it is what it is. The box, however, looks very nicely done. It looks very professional. And I dare say it doesn't look chi-fi. And I hope I don't sound politically incorrect when I say this, but it does have the fit and finish of a more established brand, which is something I like about Letshuoer Acoustics. Letshuoer Acoustics is not your typical Chinese IEM brand. I do think they have turned out one well-tuned IEM after another. The Letshuoer Cadenza, which is closer to $2,000, it's a phenomenal IEM that I think can go toe-to-toe with some of the best Summit offerings in the market right now. So this is what happens when you open the box. You get this brochure-like thingy, which has this card, which is, I'm sure not very important. And then you have product categories. You have a bit of information in Chinese, a bit of information in English about the history, the sort of timelines of the company and all that. And this sort of a business card thingy that's in here. This metal hockey puck sort of a case which opens up. It's fine. It takes a bit of time to open up. It's sturdy. I'm not sure if it will scratch or not, but it is fairly light. And those of you who like a sturdier case will like this. So that's for the hockey puck case. And you get a whole bunch of tips. You get about 4x3 12 silicone tips here. And then you get this container containing what I think are foam tips. 6 more. So you get about 18 tips, 9 sets of, 9 pairs of tips. Pretty minimal, but I think it does the job. It looks fairly professional. And of course, I've shown you the IEM shells before. The shells are fine. They're sturdy. They're made of metal, but they're not heavy. I mean, they have a bit of heft, but they're not heavy. I've worn them for a bit of time today and yesterday, and I think they fit me fine. They feel fine, and they look nice. So, if you want this sort of multicolored thing going on with these shells, then of course you can ask for them. But I do not mind this more subdued matte black with gold inlay finish. I think it looks fairly nice. You might disagree. Aesthetics are subjective, of course, but that is what they are in terms of aesthetics. They're fine. B plus level. Ergonomics, A minus level. Cable, I'm not sure what to rate this honestly. C plus, B minus perhaps, given the fact that you don't live in a world where you get good cables. Now to move on to the discussion on sound. Starting with technical performance, because I think that's where it really excels, and tonality is great also. For technical performance, I think it's fairly detailed for the price point of $600. Now, it's not going to win any prizes for best value IEM in the world or what have you, because I do think you can get IEMs that are fairly resolving at this price point. The variations from Moondrop and the Thieaudio Clairvoyance are, I think, equally resolving. Resolution is something I think people index for when they sort of make claims about how much value you get from that IEM, and I think it's resolving enough for the price. It is very resolving, but do not think that this will replace a $3,000 IEM, because, I mean, just for the sake of humoring myself, I was A-Bing this with flagship offerings from Thieaudio like the KR5 and the Xenon 6. The Xenon 6, which is $3,000, closer to $4,000, I apologize, blows this out of the water, as it should, because that's $4,000. This is $600. That said, the Xenon 6 is not 6 times more resolving. It's perhaps 25% more resolving, if you know what I mean. Diminishing returns is well known to all of you. If it's not, then you might be a newbie, but that's what happens. It's resolving. You are able to make out, let's say, if there's a bass, if there's drums going on, and bass guitar plucks going on, pulls and releases, you will be able to differentiate between the bass guitar pulls and the drums fairly well. If you have lead guitars going on and let's say a vocalist crooning away, you'll get a fair sense of separation between the two. So there is a fair amount of spatial information that goes on. You get a fair amount of sense of the reverb from drums. So all that is happening. So I would give it like an A for resolution for the price. The spaciousness and sound staging, I think, is very impressive, and I did try this on my Sony DAP, the Sony WM1ZM2, which does tend to give you a very wide stage. And on certain IEMs, I do feel the staging is not as wide as it is on other IEMs, but this was fairly wide for the price. For stage width, I do think it keeps up with more expensive IEMs. Layering is fine, stage depth is fine, stage height I thought was impressive. But overall, if I have to pick out one thing that I think it does really well in terms of technical performance, I would say it does timbre really well. So piano sounded great on a lot of tracks. I played a lot of Go-Go Penguin tracks, a lot of other tracks, and pianos were rendered very realistically. Guitars sound nice, male vocals and female vocals sound nice. And I mention this because in this sort of price point of $600, if you take into account, let's say, other IEMs like the Moondrop variations, the variations, as lauded as it tends to be, I do find very dry. On some tracks, I find it so less even because the timbre of the variation just doesn't work for me. And it hasn't worked for me for most Moondrop IEMs. But I don't think that's the case for this one. It does sound timbre right. And I'm a bit of a timbre aficionado. I've been a long-term owner of the Hyphaman Susvara, which is great timbre. Big fan of ZMF headphones. I'm a timbre head. So yeah, I mean, this does satisfy me for timbre for this price point. So in terms of technical performance, I would say the timbre of this is decent. They have good quality drivers going on, good implementation, so it sounds cohesive. The 7 drivers don't sound like they're all firing at different, with a different mind of their own. They do form a cohesive whole in terms of presentation. Dynamics are noteworthy because it does punch and slam and render transitions from louder to softer passages or parts of the track very nicely, neatly, and without much ado. So that's for technical performance. So for overall technical performance for this price point, I would give this an A. For tonality, this is something you need to know. This is a Harman-tuned IEM or Harmonish. But in some ways, it's perhaps slightly more agreeable to me than Harman because it does have a little more air frequencies. It's not going to win any prizes for being the most airy sounding IEM ever. It's not an Empire Ears Odin. And I feel like even the Letshuoer S12 on some source chains could sound more airy. But this is a fairly neutral, well-rounded IEM with a nice bass shelf to start with. The bass doesn't taper off too early. So it does account for some mid-bass, which doesn't mean you get a lot of mid-bass warmth. It doesn't have enough mid-bass to give you like a mid-bass warmth or bloat. It is a rounded mid bass. You get a sense of the tactility of drums. It's very well rounded, so you get sort of the sub bass depth of drum hits, and you also get a rounded mid bass, so you don't feel like, let's say, bass guitars are devoid of decay. So it does have a well-rounded bass, is basically what I'm trying to say. But it's clean enough in its transition from mid bass to mid range that you don't get any excess bloat. You don't get an overly chesty rendition of male vocals. You don't get an overly husky rendition of female vocals, I think. So that, I think, is nice. Female vocals in particular sound nice because it does have pinna gain trending towards the upper mids and lower treble. So that's very present, very harmonious in that sense. So you do get a fair amount of vocal presence. So vocals will come at you. Female vocals will sound very nice in particular. Lead guitars can sound very assertive. So metal does work with this IEM, I think. And then trending towards treble, there's a bit of a roll-off, I think, in sort of mid-treble area. So there's no sibilance or sharpness going on. If you've heard reviewers talk about sibilance and sharpness, maybe this unit wasn't burnt in their cases. It was fairly burnt in my case, so I did not perceive any treble, sibilance, brightness, attack, sharpness, all that, no zinginess. And then around 8 to 10K and beyond, there is some energy, so you do get a fair amount of sense of spaciousness, airiness around instruments, but it's not gonna like flood you with like a lot of spaciousness, and so it's not, and the flip side is it won't sound very bright in that region. So overall it's fairly well tuned. I would not call it warm, neither would I call it bright. If you are one of those looking for a safe IEM that does everything well and nothing poorly, I would say this could be a mid-5 benchmark. So that's it, guys. It's a strong performer from Letshuoer. A shout out to Letshuoer for letting me review this. Letshuoer is an impressive Chinese brand, and I do hope to get in their cadenza. This gets my strong recommendation. If you want to know more about this is not my longest review, of course, but I do think I wanted to get these sorts of thoughts out to you. I'll be dropping more reviews in terms of written posts and what have you on the Head5 Facebook group. And if you want to engage me in a longer discussion about this IEM, feel free to write to me via comments to this video, and I do try to respond to each and every one of you. So that's it from me. Sajid Ahmed signing out, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.